I began to notice that my husband, Patrick Newman, 40 years old, seemed to be in love again. His usual sneakers had disappeared, replaced with shiny handmade leather shoes. In the closet, the old worn-out underwear had been switched to seamless, high-stretch ones in pastel pink, a color I had never seen him like. That small change, it turned out, revealed so much. His target was Jessica Nolan, an 18-year-old girl, freshly graduated, full of youthful energy and making no effort to hide it. Patrick paraded her around at events, publicly, as if I had never existed. Outsiders would only shake their heads. Patrick treats Sophia so well. Handsome, rich, and lets his wife manage the finances at home. What more could she ask for compared to other men? They had no idea how much coldness was hidden inside that so-called goodness. I stayed silent. I even tried to endure. Until the day Jessica came to me. She stood in front of me, eyes red, voice timid, like I myself had been 20 years ago, pouring an entire heart out for just one man. I looked at her, eyes sparkling with belief, while for me, wrinkles had already crept to the corners of my eyes. And that very morning, I'd spotted a silver strand of hair by my ear in the mirror. I smiled, half joking, half serious. Jessica, I could divorce, you know. I thought she would be afraid. But no. Jessica's eyes lit up like a child receiving a gift. Sophia, you really would divorce? Her voice trembled with joy. I slowly crossed my legs, leaned back, suppressing a sigh. Of course. So what do you plan to do next? Jessica pouted, thought for a moment, then innocently replied, I want to go to Hawaii on a honeymoon with him, then give him another child. You don't know, he really wants to have another baby. That sentence cut into my memory like a cold blade. Patrick wanted another child? It had clearly been him, years ago, who insisted on getting the procedure done, because he was afraid I would have to go through childbirth again. And now, everything had changed. So love and promises also had expiration dates. I sat up straight, crossed my arms, the smile vanishing from my lips. My voice was slow, icy. Jessica Nolan, I was only joking just now. Patrick Newman and I have been married 20 years. Our families are even business partners. Divorce isn't simple. Instead of dreaming about Hawaii and honeymoons, you'd better think about how to get as much money out of him as you can. Back home, I found Patrick sitting on the sofa, papers in his hand, calm as though the outside world had nothing to do with him. Time seemed to favor this man. At 40, his face only carried more maturity, making him even more attractive. And I knew that was exactly what was pulling Jessica in, like a moth to flame. Hearing the door open, Patrick didn't bother to look up. That wordless rhythm of 20 years together. As long as I said nothing, then there was nothing to be said. I went into the kitchen, quietly preparing dinner. Each motion of chopping vegetables, turning on the stove, setting the table moving slowly as if I were controlling my own breathing. When I brought the food out, he put his phone down, pulled a chair up, his tone flat, like reading off a checklist. Vicki said she'll come home for Thanksgiving. Told you to pick her up. I nodded. All right. He continued. Mom's health hasn't been good. Needs to go for a checkup. I replied, Okay, you take care of it. Then he said, The bathroom floor's a bit slippery. I want to get someone to fix it. I still kept my voice light. All right, whatever you say. Everything was calm, until he dropped one line. Jessica came to see you. Only then did Patrick look up from his bowl, his eyes indifferent, faintly surprised, as if he'd just heard mention of some casual acquaintance. So what? Just those two words, blunt, striking right at my chest. His mistress had come to me, and all he asked was, So what? A lump rose in my throat. I frowned, staring straight into Patrick's eyes. Patrick, we are husband and wife. You're having an affair. I don't know which word hit him, only that he slammed his bowl down on the table, the clatter making the cutlery tremble. Sophia, don't use such ugly words. Jessica's still a child. It's not what you think. Don't overinterpret. A child? I laughed bitterly inside. Never thought Patrick could fool himself and cover the truth with such a ridiculous excuse. Dinner that night dissolved in silence, so cold I could hear the ticking of the clock. I thought things would drag on, back and forth. But no. The very next day, when I came home with groceries, I opened the door to find Jessica sitting comfortably in the living room. She wore the slippers I had bought for our daughter, her pale legs swinging lightly, smiling sweetly, eyes fixed on Patrick, who sat beside her, leisurely peeling an apple. Patrick, you're amazing! Her voice drawn out, flirtatious. Patrick smiled too, setting a perfectly peeled apple slice on a plate. All right, here you go. Eat slowly. That scene left my mouth bitter. I used to love apples, and it had been for me that Patrick had practiced peeling them so skillfully. Now those familiar hands were serving someone else. Jessica sat happily swinging on the sofa, her long legs brushing, hair falling over her shoulders. Patrick's gaze darkening as he looked at her. That darkness, I knew, was desire. He pulled Jessica closer, lifted her straight onto his lap. Just as they were about to touch, I pushed the door open. The door slammed, the sound loud enough to freeze the whole room. But Jessica stayed right there, only tilted her head to look at me, lips curling. Oh, Sophia, here we meet again. Sorry, I twisted my ankle. Patrick was helping me check it. You're not mad, right? She shifted slightly. Patrick let out a low moan, that sound stabbing into my ears like humiliation. The first half of my life, lived in pampering, I had never imagined falling into such a scene. What was I supposed to do? Rush at her? Claw her like a shrew? Scratch the face of the man betraying me? But that would only make me more pitiful. No, there was no wise choice in that moment. Better to divorce. 20 years of marriage, by law, half the assets were mine. Divorce, and I'd have tens of millions of dollars. Why not? In my head flickered thoughts of a free life, dating a few cute young men, a life lived just for myself. The thought wandered, even leaving me stunned by the thrill rising within me. I set the grocery bag down on the table, turned my head to Patrick, and this time my voice was clear, each word sharp as a blade. Let's get divorced. Act 3. Patrick did not agree to the divorce. His reasoning sounded both laughable and bitter. He claimed he had never made any mistake, beyond principle. Not only that, Patrick dragged in relatives and friends to persuade me. My in-laws, whom I had cared for over 20 years, sat in front of me with gentle yet cold persuasion. He didn't do anything too bad, dear. Try marriage counseling. Later we'll tell him to transfer more money to you. It sounded as if my loyalty could be exchanged for some allowance for old age. Our mutual friends were no better. They chuckled. That girl is just after money. If you leave now, aren't you just giving her what she wants? Patrick's business is thriving. The assets keep growing. If you walk away, it's like handing everything to her. And splitting assets is complicated. Think carefully. Even my best friend, who herself wanted a divorce because her husband cheated, sighed and told me, maybe don't. Try marriage counseling first. At least Patrick has money. See? As long as there's money, it's like holding a ticket for immunity, able to erase every mistake in marriage. I said nothing, only quietly prepared the divorce papers. My father, Harold Turner, when he heard the news, also came. As soon as he walked in, he scolded me as if I were a disobedient child. What man doesn't stray sometimes? He treated you well for 20 years. Isn't that enough? You're almost 40 now after divorce. Then what? Besides, the Newmans and our family still have business ties. If you make a fuss, both sides will suffer losses. His face was radiant, complexion healthy. Clearly my stepmother took good care of him. The newborn son obedient, and he had no space in his mind to think about how I was living. The last person who came to persuade me was Victoria, my daughter, the child I had raised from the day she was born until she walked into Stanford. Hearing she was back, I instinctively reached out to hug her, but she pushed me away hard. "Mom, why do you have to divorce Dad?" In front of everyone else, I had always stood firm, but in that moment, I shrank back. I whispered, "Your father cheated. I don't want to live like this anymore." Victoria frowned. "It's that Jessica, isn't it? Dad already said, she's just a friend. You're overreacting." Her eyes looked at me impatiently, carrying the same cold, arrogant look as Patrick. "Mom, you've lived comfortably for half your life. If you divorce now, can you handle it? You won't be able to get used to it, and I won't be able to help you." Honestly, before she came home, I thought at least she would hug me, would be angry and confront her father, would stand by me. But no, she walked in, snapped at me, then stormed upstairs. Slam. Her door shut with a bang, as if ripping my heart apart. "Sophia, how did you end up like this?" That night, while I was showering, Patrick came into the bathroom, something he hadn't done in a long time. The last time we had been intimate was over a year ago. He stepped in, his cold eyes sweeping over me. That look so unfamiliar it gave me chills. But his hands didn't stop, moving over my body skillfully like an old habit. Patrick whispered, "Don't be mad anymore, okay?" The words sounded like comfort, but in his eyes, in the way he touched me, there was no love left, only possession. He was used to me belonging to him, like an object that couldn't be missing in this house. And I stood there, letting the hot water fall on my shoulders, asking myself, is this still marriage? Or just a prison I've stayed in too long? "She won't show up in front of you anymore," Patrick said, voice low, as if his words were a favor to me. The temperature in the steamy room kept rising, the mirror fogging up, but my heart only grew colder. I closed my eyes, letting tears blend with the hot water running down my cheeks, indistinguishable from steam. "Patrick," I called softly. "Hmm?" He still pretended to be gentle. I opened my eyes, stared straight at him. "Did you sleep with her already?" He stayed silent, and I knew. His silence was more cruel than any confession. A fury ignited in my chest, like fire-catching alcohol. I laughed faintly, but the sound shattered in my throat. "You truly make me feel disgusted." Jessica, she was only 18. If Patrick had chosen someone 30, 40, I could at least console myself that men are sometimes weak. But he chose a girl barely out of college, naive, clueless about life. A girl the same age as my daughter Vicki. How could he be so heartless? Patrick exploded, shouting in contempt, "Sophia, don't be ridiculous. You think you're still attractive? Look at yourself, messy hair, ruined face." Those words cut me apart like blades. I clenched my fist so hard, my nails pierced my skin, blood dripping red, and that sting cleared my mind sharper than ever. "Patrick, you think I can't fight back? I will divorce you, at all costs." The next morning, coming downstairs, I rarely saw Patrick cook breakfast himself. At the table, my daughter sat with her head lowered, and when she saw me, she only muttered a reluctant, "Morning, Mom." Patrick played the role of model husband and father, a smug smile at his lips. "Vicki, like we talked yesterday, you have to forgive Mom." "You're tired from the ride. Eat now. Dad made your favorite sandwich." I said nothing, only felt his triumphant gaze silently challenging me. The doorbell rang. Maria led Jessica in, her voice flat. "Good morning." I came to bring Patrick some documents. Jessica smiled faintly, then casually sat down, as if this house had long belonged to her. Vicki not only didn't think it was wrong, she even pulled out a chair. "Sit down, join us for breakfast." In front of me, Jessica pretended to be embarrassed, but still leisurely sat in my rightful seat. To rub salt in the wound, my daughter placed my breakfast in front of Jessica, then poured her a glass of orange juice, the one thing I always loved in the morning. Jessica beamed, trying to win Vicki over, and the two of them chirped about school, then squealed when they realized they attended the same university. "Oh my God, Vicky, you're so cute! I thought you'd hate me like your mom." Vicky smirked, replying, "My mom's been overreacting lately. Don't mind her." I sat there, hearing every word, my mind buzzing. Just one breakfast, and my husband's mistress and my daughter became best friends. From the moment Vicky said I was overreacting, I heard nothing else. My heart froze, my hands trembled. I stood and walked out of the house, breathing the cold air deep into my lungs to stay sane. I needed to see someone. Someone I hadn't contacted in over 10 years. My first love, Christopher Blake. Now he was a top legal consultant. In the cafe, I told Christopher I wanted a divorce. He didn't pity me, only squinted and smirked. No regrets? Even at his age, his temperament was the same as ever. Words always sharp, cutting. I thought to myself, if only he had been gentler back then, maybe I wouldn't have had to let go. I didn't bother arguing, only pulled a bank card from my bag, set it on the table. I looked into it. Your market rate now is $10,000. Here's $5,000. After the divorce, I'll pay the rest. Christopher picked up the card, twirled it, then slipped it into his pocket, smirking. All right then, madam. On the way back, he insisted on driving me part of the way. Compared to me, someone with a picture-perfect family, his last 10 years had been much harsher. I heard his wife had died of illness, no children, so he threw himself into work, climbing alone to become the golden lawyer of San Francisco. He drove a bright red Maserati, engine roaring, color so flashy it made me frown. At your age, you still like this gaudy stuff? I wondered how his late wife ever tolerated that taste. Christopher raised an eyebrow, teased. You used to like flashy things, remember? I was speechless. True, in my 20s, I had adored everything loud and bold. Who would have thought, at 40, he still carried that same youthful vibe, really? Endurance was admirable. The car was gaudy, but Christopher taught me so much about what I needed to prepare before divorce. Following his guidance, I traced Patrick's bank accounts, even hired a private investigator. And how absurd. I discovered Patrick was secretly dating Jessica in my old home, the apartment I had bought before our marriage. Back then, when we first married, we lived there a few years. Later, with a daughter, a growing household, and a nanny, we moved to the villa. I had nearly forgotten it, yet Patrick turned the old apartment into their hideout. I dug out the old keys, quietly opened the door. Inside, little had changed, just a few extra things. On the wall above the sofa hung their photo together. Next to the dining table were some knitted crafts Jessica had made. Clearly, she wanted to become Patrick's legal wife. But what tightened my chest wasn't the photo or the toys, but tiny details that were cruelly precise. Their photo together was posed exactly like my wedding portrait with Patrick years ago. The knitted craft Jessica made was an orange, the fruit I loved most. And in the kitchen, a pot simmered, the secret soup recipe I had only ever shared with my mother-in-law. In this world, only she and I knew. And now, it was in my husband's mistress's kitchen. One betrayal after another suffocated me. I stood in that old apartment, heart heavy as stone, asking myself, maybe I was such a failure that everyone around me found it so easy to hurt me without hesitation. Lost in the chaos of my thoughts, suddenly the door burst open. The sound of heels clicked against the floor. Jessica walked in, eyes glowing. She spun and leapt into Patrick's arms behind her. Honey, this is amazing! I'm about to give you a baby! Her voice full of triumph, as if declaring victory. Patrick gently caressed her face, his gaze tender. Then he looked up and met my eyes. In that moment, our eyes locked. One stood in daylight, the other frozen amidst a mountain of betrayal. For the first time in my life, I saw fear etched clearly on Patrick's face. Perhaps he had never thought he would find me here, our old apartment, now turned into a cheap hideout for his affair. In contrast to his panic, I was strangely calm, as if my rage had surpassed its limit, leaving only a frozen void. I pulled out my phone, opened the camera, my finger pressed with a crisp click. Patrick immediately lunged at me, long arms trying to snatch it away, but I leaned aside, raised my hand to block him. My voice rang out, firm, each word sharp as a needle. Patrick, think carefully. This apartment has security cameras. All I have to do is extract the footage, and your faces will have nothing left to hide. He froze, exhaled heavily, chest heaving like a man cornered. After years in business, Patrick was used to controlling everything: work, money, reputation, even me. But now, facing me, the wife beyond his control, for the first time, he showed unease. "Sophia, stop making a scene. Go home," he growled, like giving an order. "I want a divorce," I answered, my tone indifferent yet merciless. "That won't happen. Forget it." I said divorce. Tomorrow we file. Otherwise, just wait and see it online. I tightened my grip on the phone to show I wasn't bluffing. He roared, "What do you get out of this mess? Have you thought about our family, about Vicki?" The moment he mentioned Vicki, the daughter I raised with my own hands, my calm shattered. Lightning tore through my chest. I grabbed a vase from the cabinet, hurled it with all my strength to the floor. Crash! Shards scattered, the sound shattering in the cramped apartment. "Shut up!" I screamed, throat choking yet my voice booming. "Shut up! Don't you dare mention my daughter!" I lunged, yelling straight in his face, my breath searing hot, tearing the air apart. "Bastard! When you cheated, you didn't remember your daughter. When you got another woman pregnant, you didn't remember her. Now, caught in the act, you turn around and want me to think of her. You're the definition of a hypocrite. You betrayed me and still want to silence me? Dream on. Dream on." I pointed straight at his face, my hands trembling, but my voice cold and sharp as a blade. "Either we part peacefully or we go to court. Your choice." I walked out of that apartment, straight to Christopher's law office. Luckily, he was free. Seeing me enter, his face still carried traces of fatigue he hadn't hidden. He only frowned slightly, then led me to a private room, poured me a glass of water, placed it in front of me. "What happened?" he asked, voice steady, but his eyes scanned every shift on my face. I bit my lip, then exhaled. "Don't even ask." "Just ran into that mistress. She's pregnant." As I spoke, my throat tightened, each word tearing out like flesh. Christopher leaned back, the corner of his lips lifting into a cold smile. "So what do you think now?" Just one simple question, and fire surged through me again. "What do you think I can think? What use is thinking now?" I nearly shouted, voice trembling from restraint. He said nothing, only stayed silent a while, then pushed the glass toward me. Such a small act, but instantly smothered the flames inside, making tears well up. "Sorry," I murmured. Christopher shrugged, voice casual. "Doesn't matter. Clients are gods." He said the situation was very favorable for me. I had photos of the apartment, proof Patrick had fathered a child with someone else, a serious marital violation. Later, in asset division, I would hold the advantage. I nodded, mind hazy, not knowing whether to be glad or sorrowful. Leaving his office, he offered to drive me, but I refused. I wanted to walk alone. I wandered through the park for 2-3 hours. Friday afternoon, the park was quiet. Only a few elders exercising, a few couples strolling hand in hand. One young couple stopped me in my tracks. The boy held up his phone, snapped a photo of the girl under the golden light, then leaned in, stealing a kiss. The girl giggled, cheeks flushed red. From afar, I stood frozen. Once, Patrick and I had been that sweet. I remembered at 18, stepping into university, we had already been the dream couple. The Newmans were wealthy, Patrick was handsome, smart, admired by countless girls. But he never wavered. He made me feel utterly safe. I believed he was my only love. In sophomore year, He knelt down to propose in the campus courtyard, amid cheers and blessings. Like a fairy tale, the princess and prince entering the chapel. I once believed we would live happily ever after. After graduation, Patrick took over the family company. Within years, revenue multiplied. He became the pride of the Newmans. He was so busy that on the day our daughter was born, he was abroad signing a contract. My in-laws hinted often about wanting another grandchild to complete the family. But Patrick always brushed it off, saying he didn't want me to suffer again, because I had nearly died of hemorrhage after Vicky's birth. Back then, I believed he truly loved me. He treated me like a princess, sheltered me in a bubble away from storms. But bubbles always burst. The man who lifted me highest was the one to drag me lowest. Jessica. She wasn't the first woman to intrude, but she was the first Patrick flaunted before me. He was testing, to see where my final limit lay. And perhaps, what he really wanted, was both, the family and the mistress. Returning home, the scene before me crushed my chest. My in-laws sat in the living room, laughter mingling with my daughter's chatter. Vicki sat between them, eyes sparkling, innocent face oblivious, babbling about school, while my mother-in-law held her hand, smiling sweetly. That foolish girl. I had sheltered her so much she couldn't see the malice behind those seemingly kind smiles. And in that room, Jessica, sitting prim, demure, smiling sweetly, as if she were the true mistress of the house. Every glance, every gesture radiated the confidence of someone convinced she had won. I froze at the doorway, fists clenched tight around my bag. In that moment, Patrick looked up. The red mark still vivid on his cheek from my slap. His eyes darkened at the sight of me. No words, no extra expression. After 20 years, one look was enough to understand. And he understood I would not back down. His expression instantly hardened, turning to Jessica, voice curt, "Go home." The air froze. Jessica's smile vanished. She looked at him, voice trembling. Why? Patrick didn't bother explaining, just snapped, "Go." In the Newman's house, money was law. Patrick held the purse, his word was command. My in-laws exchanged glances, confused but silent. Only my mother-in-law shot me a sharp glare, as if all this chaos was my fault. Patrick called the driver. Jessica rose shakily, face pale, eyes wet. As she left, she turned back 3 times, gaze lingering, as if torn from her claimed territory. Vicki was different. She shot up, shrieking, voice piercing. "Mom, what's wrong with you again?" "Why did you drive Jessica away? She's my friend." Her words stabbed into my chest. That child, still blind, still refusing to see. For the first time, I no longer endured. I laughed, a hollow, chilling sound. "Your best friend is your father's mistress." Vicki froze, eyes wide, lips stammering. "I told you it's a misunderstanding. They're nothing." I looked straight at her, my words slicing. "Jessica is pregnant with your father's child." The room fell silent. Vicki stood frozen, pale, lips trembling without words. She turned to Patrick, panic in her eyes, clinging to a last hope. "Dad, is this true?" Patrick sent everyone out, leaving just us 2. The living room felt vast yet suffocating. Between us stood a long table, its dark wood reflecting yellow light. He sat across, elbows on the table, frown deep, face full of irritation. He scratched his head, exhaled as if enduring a stubborn child. "I don't understand, Sophia. Why must you make things so tense?" His voice even, but his eyes burned with restrained anger. He leaned back, arms crossed, as if he still had the right to dictate my fate. "I already said, Jessica won't affect your place. Even when the baby comes, nothing between us will change." I froze, then laughed. A dry, bitter laugh ripped from my throat. How could anyone shamelessly say such words? I stared at him, each word cold. "Are you insane?" Patrick slammed his hand on the table, the sound booming. He gritted his teeth, snarling, Look at Johnson in Los Angeles, 60 years old and still fathering kids. His wife even cared for the mother for a month. Or Chairman Brown in Chicago, with a whole apartment of girlfriends waiting their turn. Men are like that, so what? He barked, every word fired at me, trying to justify his blatant betrayal. And me? I only wanted another child to please my parents. If your health didn't stop you, why would I look elsewhere? Sophia, think again. Haven't I treated you well all these years? My fists clenched, nails biting flesh. He pressed on, louder, harsher. You lost your mother. Your father only cares about his new wife and son. Wasn't it me who gave money, made them respect you, bow to you? Every party you dressed glamorous, spending like water. Everyone flattered you. You thought it was because you were special? No. They wanted ties to Patrick Newman. His glare seared me, his fist tight. My mother begged for more grandchildren every year. I held back. Only Vicki, I compromised. You think I didn't want more kids? You think I'll let strangers inherit all this empire? Are you naive, or am I? Your friend was right. You truly don't know enough. His voice thundered, face flushed, as if in this story I was the guilty one. I sat still, listening as he vented. And then I laughed. Because when rage reaches its peak, one cannot cry, only laugh. A bitter, heart-wrenching laugh. 20 years together, I once thought it was deep love. But in his eyes, it was only condescension, charity. I looked at his face, no different from the one I had loved at 20, yet all I felt was an unbearable ache. I no longer cared to argue right or wrong in this marriage of betrayal, because right and wrong no longer mattered. The only thing that mattered was reclaiming what was mine, then leaving him. I slowly stood, pulled from my bag a stack of papers. My hand trembled slightly, but my voice was steel. If you're so dissatisfied with me, here's the divorce agreement. Sign it. Patrick froze, eyes wide, as if never imagining I would dare go this far. After everything I've said, you still want divorce? I looked straight into his eyes, unflinching. Yes. Divorce. The air stopped. Patrick was silent for seconds, then snorted coldly. He snatched the papers, skimmed a few lines, then with one violent stroke, he signed. The ink jagged, shaky, but it ended everything. 20 years of marriage. After filing for divorce, the first thing I did was leave the house. I packed more than a dozen boxes, most of them filled with Patrick's gifts, handbags, custom-made designer dresses. That was when I realized, all these years I had lived far too loosely, no wonder ending up as the abandoned wife felt almost deserved. Thinking it over, I called a second-hand luxury store to haul everything away and sell it. I donated all the money. The second thing, find a place to live, find a job. Even though we had house staff, I had always personally handled everything related to Patrick and our daughter. I chose a furnished one-bedroom apartment and moved in. As for work, before I could think carefully, Christopher texted me first. He wanted me to come work at his firm as an office staff. I didn't pretend to be proud. After so many years away from society, I truly needed a transition. After a short rest, I started at Christopher's law office. His firm had more than 200 people, with 7 to 8 just in administration. My role was handling employee benefits and motivation. It wasn't too complicated. The salary wasn't high either, only $50,000 a year. Back then, one handbag I bought cost more than that. But this was the first money I earned with my own hands. Not long after, Christopher asked if I wanted to return to law. Years ago, after college, I had taken a short law course, but because Patrick was buried in work and his parents were often ill, I never looked for a job, staying home to care for the family. Later, as his income soared, all the money was handed to me to manage, and he told me I didn't need to suffer. Once our daughter was born, I couldn't bear to leave her for work. Looking back, one wrong step led to a lifetime mistake. When I left society, becoming a woman easy to fool, being discarded by a man was only a matter of time. I agreed to Christopher's suggestion, bought piles of books, began studying seriously for the bar exam. During that time, my daughter reached out, saying she wanted to visit me. I refused. Once I had been crushed when the bubble burst, now it was her turn to learn to face storms. Even if she fell, it was fine, because her mother would rebuild a stronger roof for both of us. I knew everything happening in the house. Maria, the maid who had been with me 20 years, kept updating me. The day after I moved out, Jessica moved in, brazenly acting as mistress of the house. She was young, pampered by Patrick, didn't care to study anymore, only waiting to be the rich man's wife. Vicki eventually woke up, realized Jessica's ambition, but sadly, Jessica was already pregnant, protected by my in-laws. Many times, my mother-in-law scolded Vicki harshly for her lack of ambition, for letting the company fall into outsiders' hands, until the poor girl stormed out of the house. Patrick didn't bother looking for her, even cut off her credit card. In the end, Vicki tucked her tail, returned home, meekly apologizing to Jessica. That night, she cried on the phone to me. As soon as I picked up, she screamed, "What kind of mother are you? Only caring about yourself. That mistress already moved in and you do nothing? Dad has so much money, are you giving it all away? Don't you ever think of me?" I answered coldly, "I'm studying for the bar exam," then hung up. Vicki blocked me, then packed up to return to Stanford. Meanwhile, I devoted myself to studying, ignoring the world outside my window. The textbooks, thick as bricks, I flipped through until pages nearly tore. Christopher even teased, "Just like 20 years ago when you studied for college entrance." And then one early autumn day, I officially stepped into the bar exam room. On the same day, I held the judicial certificate in my hand. My phone suddenly rang. It was Vicki. Her voice was choked with sobs, barely breathing, unable to finish a sentence. I had been cold to her for a long time, but she was still my flesh and blood. Hearing her cry, my heart clenched. I quickly packed and rushed to Stanford immediately. Christopher, hearing the news, insisted on driving me. We drove through the night, streetlights retreating behind us, the engine humming steadily, neither of us saying a word. When we arrived, I learned my daughter's boyfriend had cheated. Vicki, raised in luxury, had never tasted humiliation. Her first betrayal felt like her world collapsing. She sat dazed, shoulders trembling, tears flowing nonstop. I sat beside her, gently wiped her tears. "Do you know who the girl is?" Vicki shook her head, hoarse. "No. Only that she's also a student." I turned to Christopher, told him to take her to the hotel to rest, while I drove back to the campus gate. That night, cold wind whipped my face. I stood waiting like a hunter with a camera. In my hand was a photo I had taken. Soon, my daughter's boyfriend, Tyler Benson, stepped out of a sleek black Mercedes. He walked to the driver's side, said something, then lifted his head. At that instant, I froze. Even with sunglasses and a mask covering most of her face, I recognized her instantly. Jessica. My blood turned to ice. What did this mean? My daughter's boyfriend, entangled with my husband's mistress, bold enough to be tied to her, his future stepmother? Even after all the storms I had endured in recent months, that sight still stunned me, like ice water poured over my head. At the hotel, I showed the photo to Christopher. He sat silent for a long while, eyes narrowing, voice low but clear. Could it all be a plan? I shuddered. One seducing my daughter, one betraying my husband. Could it all have been one scheme? I immediately called Vicki out to talk. She stepped out with swollen eyes, pale face, voice small as a whisper. Gone was her defiance, her rebellion. Looking at her pitiful state, my heart still ached. I pulled her close, stroked her hair. "It's all right. Mom's here. Don't be afraid." Vicki broke down, crying, clinging to me. "Mom!" "I'm sorry." Indeed, until you feel the knife, you don't know pain. That blow was what finally taught her betrayal, what made her empathize with me, the mother she once coldly blamed. Vicki choked out her story. Tyler had been a poor orphan student, bright. One rainy day, he saved her from bullies. Since then, they grew close, became lovers. I asked, "Did you tell him about the family?" Vicki nodded, trembling. Tyler was hardworking, often spoke of his unhappy childhood. I pitied him, so I told him everything about our family, even said I was an only child, that one day the Newman assets would be mine. I promised to take care of him. Hearing that, my blood boiled. Foolish child, handing over bait to a wolf, thinking it kindness. I was so furious I raised my hand. Vicki instantly recoiled, eyes full of fear. She knew this time I was truly angry. Christopher quickly intervened, soothing. "One stumble and she'll learn. She'll understand later." I shot him a glare. "Spoiling her only ruins her. What if she repeats this?" He arched a brow, replied swiftly, "She won't." "Vicki, you know your mistake now, right?" The girl nodded frantically, like a pecking chicken, her eyes pleading at me. I clenched my teeth, rage with nowhere to go, and pinched Christopher's arm hard under the table, enough to make him wince but not cry out. That very night, I hired a private investigator to look into Jessica and Tyler's connection, and the result left me utterly frozen. According to the private hospital records the detective sent me, Jessica's pregnancy was already 6 months along. 6 months ago, Patrick had been abroad, and I was with him the entire time. Every itinerary, plane ticket, hotel, all had my name. So whose child was in her belly? Clearly, Jessica had pinned the wrong father. Or rather, this was a scheme planned from the very start between her and Tyler. I sat frozen, my hand clutching the file until it trembled. All those performances of love, those tears, those sweet words, were nothing but the staging of a game. A month later, Vicki returned home on break. As soon as she stepped in, she nearly tripped over piles of baby clothes stacked in the living room. Tiny outfits, pastel blankets, every item flaunting the presence of a newcomer. My mother-in-law sat there, face glowing as if awaiting a prince, but the moment she saw Vicki, her smile vanished, replaced with open displeasure. "What are you doing back here? Shouldn't you be studying at Stanford?" Vicki straightened, her gaze cold. "This is my house. Why shouldn't I come back?" A tense silence spread. My mother-in-law waved her hand, voice dripping disdain. "Fine, whatever you want." Jessica then feigned gentleness, eyes glittering with triumph. "Vicki, you came at the perfect time. Next week your father and I will be engaged. Help me choose which ring looks better." Her sugary words stabbed like knives. Vicki shot her a long glare, then silently walked upstairs. Remembering what I'd told her before, she went into the study, quietly opened the cabinet, slipped something into her bag, and rolled her suitcase down. At the door, Patrick arrived. Father and daughter faced each other, only an arm's length apart, yet the air was suffocatingly cold. Vicki turned to leave, but Patrick stopped her, voice heavy. "What's this? You see your father and can't even say hello?" Vicki looked up, eyes dry, voice icy. "Don't you only care about your new child?" "Why bother with me?" Patrick scowled. "Watch your mouth." "I'm your father." "Oh, and?" Vicki replied, her tone light, but each word slapped him in the face. The way she stood, her eyes calm, yet tinged with pity. That look choked him, made him furious, yet left him speechless. Before he could say more, Jessica's voice rang from inside. "Honey! The baby just kicked. Come quick!" At once, Patrick turned, as if pulled by strings, hurrying inside, abandoning his daughter with her heavy suitcase. He didn't see Vicki clutching the folder tight to her chest, lips pressed hard together. That night, Vicki lay beside me in the hotel bed. We snacked and talked, warm light casting over her face, her eyes still swollen but calmer. She asked softly, "Mom, what will you do about Dad?" I looked at her, heart heavy. I didn't want her to carry more scars from this marriage of betrayal. I sighed, answered gently, "I don't plan to fight your father. On the contrary, I want to save him." Vicki shot up, stunned. "Save him? Why?" "Because of you," I said slowly. Her eyes widened, but before she could speak, I held her hand. Even if we divorce, you are still his daughter, the legal heir. I can't let others scheme and leave you with nothing. Vicki frowned, puzzled. If you think that way, why did you insist on divorce before? I stroked her face, those innocent eyes so much like Patrick's. I whispered, because the one I love most is myself. I don't want to live a life swallowing humiliation for love, and the one I love second most is you. I will use everything I have to protect my daughter's rights. I paused, tightened my grip. So yes, I'm a selfish mother. I always put my own feelings first, and I hope one day you won't lose yourself because of children or money. Do you understand? Vicky's eyes welled. She nodded shakily. Mom, I'm sorry for how I treated you before. I pulled her close, patted her back, my voice soft. It's all right. I still love you. Soon after, Patrick and Jessica's engagement party was held. The hall gleamed with chandeliers, music, clinking glasses, packed with friends, colleagues, relatives, all wearing half-true, half-fake smiles, congratulating Patrick as if celebrating a grand victory. As the bride, Jessica shone so brightly it hurt to look, the lights reflecting off her lavish white gown, her pride radiating as if she held the world in her hand. And worse, she brazenly invited Tyler, seating him at the honored family table. The moment Jessica, arm in arm with Patrick, approached to toast Tyler, her eyes swept the hall in defiance, was the moment Vicki and I walked in. Behind us was Christopher, stubbornly insisting on coming to watch the show. My heels struck sharp against the marble floor, each step slicing through the air of festivity. Patrick saw me, and for a second froze, a flash of awe in his eyes he couldn't conceal. Recently, freed from that rotten household, I had begun caring for myself again. My hair grown long, softly curled, my skin brightened by treatments. From the $50 million I received in the divorce under California law, I used a portion to restore myself inside and out. Before leaving, Vicki had personally chosen my outfit. Even Christopher, long used to my weary face, had stolen glances. Let alone Patrick. Among the crowd, many who once attended my wedding to him, who toasted our 10th, then 20th anniversaries, now saw me enter his engagement with another woman, their eyes filled with smirks, surprise, and delight. I tilted my head, smiled radiantly, stared straight at him. I came with a little gift, for health. I held out a pale brownie envelope. As Patrick reached, Jessica snatched it first, voice syrupy. What's this, sis? I smiled brighter. Oh, just his medical report. I forgot to give it after the divorce. The hall fell silent. Patrick tore the paper from her hand, eyes scanning the lines, his face darkening more with each word until he nearly roared. It says, I can't have children? Then, whose baby are you carrying? Jessica's face drained, but she stammered. Of course it's yours. That report's fake. This child is yours. Patrick froze, his hands shaking. Then his voice dropped, icy. Whose child is it? I know, Vicki suddenly cut in, her voice sharp as a knife, pouring oil on fire. She flung down a stack of photos. Clear as day, after outings with Patrick, Jessica met Tyler at hotels. Pictures of them entering, leaving together. Inside was even a sonogram, pregnancy at 32 weeks. The hall went deathly still. Then my mother-in-law erupted, eyes blazing, storming up to slap Jessica hard, the crack echoing through the hall. You liar! You dare betray our family? Tyler rushed forward to shield Jessica, but before he could speak, Patrick's fist crashed into him. Uproar broke loose, glasses shattering, screams, tables crashing. Chaos exploded in the glittering banquet. And I simply held Vicky's hand, and with Christopher, we walked out in silence. I lifted my dress, each step steady, head held high, like a queen leaving victorious. Behind us, chaos thundered. but ahead of me stretched a bright, straight path, opening into a new chapter of my life.